Hi, good morning. This is Dear. Hi, good morning. This is Dirk Wazinski from Parallels here. Welcome to our Wednesday introduction to Parallels Mac Management for SCCM. For those of you who have never taken a WebEx webinar here, you are all on mute at this point. If you have a question, in the right-hand side of your menu, you should be able to go ahead and utilize the chat function. We do have a proctor here as well, who will be standing by to answer any technical questions or to take things offline that you may have as far as questions regarding the technical nature of some of the slides we are going to show. This is an overview demo, so this is a 30-minute overview presentation of Parallels Mac Management. We are going to discuss exactly why we developed the solution, the problems that we see out there with Macs within Windows networks right now, and how the solution works from a 30,000-foot level. Tomorrow, we will have a deep dive demo, which is about 60 minutes in length, which will go directly into the screens and the keystrokes and everything one does within SCCM and Parallels in order to manage Macs within the enterprise. And if you'd like to attend that demo as well, all you'll need to do is go to the website and sign up for it. As well, we'll go ahead for everyone attending here. We'll make sure you get a link, direct link to that. You'll see some facts and figures that are going to be described in the first couple slides. The documentation and the reports that we pull these from will also be provided to you as well free of charge. So the IDC reports and the IBM reports and those types of things, we'll go ahead and provide you those as well, so you have that information. So with that, we're going to go ahead and get started and talk about Mac Endpoint Management and how we do it in System Center Configuration Manager. Firstly, I guess one of the main reasons why we do what we do here at Parallels is pretty simple. It's primarily because most of our customers, which are SCCM and Windows-based IT administrators, are worried about security. They're worried about endpoint management. They're worried about breach. And so what we did is we kind of collated a few breach facts from a couple different reports and a couple different surveys we did of our end users. And what we found primarily is 70% of all network breaches begin at an endpoint, whether it be PC, whether it be Mac, whether it be mobile device. The breach, the way the individual or the organization gets within the network, the breach occurs at the endpoint, 70% of those. And that's actually from the IDC report that you'll be getting a link to. But when you take a look at those breaches, over 90% of them are quote-unquote patchable. And what that means is that a patch has already been released by the manufacturer of the software or the hardware that plugs the hole, plugs the security hole that allows the nefarious entity to get into your network. 90% of the time, that patch already exists. It's just not been applied. It's not been applied in a timely manner. And that's one of the things that a lot of our customers and a lot of the people that manage mixed types of environment with both Mac and PC have a challenge with when they're trying to go ahead and patch all their Windows devices, and then they have to turn around and work either themselves or with another team to patch those Windows devices. Now, when IDC or IBM actually did a study and talked to IT administrators and sysadmins, 42% of them said breaches have already occurred on their network. And from that point, that was some brutal honesty, where they understood that there were breaches, there were times that their network had been exploited, and they could track that. A scarier proposition was that 20% of those in the survey, those IT managers, they didn't know whether or not a breach had happened or not. They were unaware whether or not someone had breached their security into their network. And what this really all comes down to is the cost of a breach. What does a breach cost? We know what the physical cost is. We know what the economic cost is. IBM came out in 2017 and said the average total cost in the United States for a single breach is potentially $7.9 million, almost $8 million. And working with so many small, medium, and even enterprise-sized customers in their IT departments. I don't know many IT departments that have $8 million lying around that they could go ahead and utilize for both the labor, the software, the security experts, and everybody else coming in to help them work on a breach. So endpoint security for us is not just a marketing scheme. It's not just something that we talk about because this is what we sell. This is something that we developed, Parallels Mac Management, specifically to address within the Windows ecosystem. So, and the reason we've done that is because we understand, just like you do, the people that are on this call, that the vast majority of administrators of SysAdmins utilize Configuration Manager and System Center Configuration Manager in order to manage the endpoints on their Windows networks. That's what they do. There are some other players. There's LANdesk. There's Dell has something. There's a whole series of other little products that many people utilize, but they barely come over the 10% market penetration. The vast majority of networks out there utilize Configuration Manager and System Center Configuration Manager to manage their networks. So we determined if that was the entity there, if that was the main entity in which people were managing, why pull them away from what they're already utilizing? We should augment what they're already utilizing in order to go ahead and help them manage their Macs. Because we understood that Macs needed management just like every other device. On your Windows networks, the individuals that are in this webinar right now, you manage Windows networks, you manage Windows endpoints. Let's say your supervisor, someone says you need to prevent Bluetooth transmissions and file transfers in Windows 10. Right? This is something you need to do. This is a project. We need to go ahead and shut down Windows 10. We don't want anybody connecting to Bluetooth. Well, how do we do that? Well, if you go on TechNet, it's relatively easy because there's the code in order to do it. And there you go, and that you write it, and you're able to go ahead and push it out. Now, how does a Windows administrator go ahead and do the same thing for Macs presently, right now? Well, this is a picture of my daughter dressed as a pirate because I don't know, because I'm a Windows person. I have no idea how a Mac administrator will go ahead and lock down Bluetooth on those devices because I manage a Windows network and I manage Windows. So what I'm left with as a Windows administrator, someone who is responsible for the security on my network, is I'm kind of outsourcing. I'm putting the onus on someone else, on another piece of software, on another administrator, in order to protect the endpoints that connect to my network. And a little bit of a humor here. We all know about the Mac user and the Mac admin, right? And if there are Mac users, I'm a Mac user, so I sometimes fit this little profile here. But Mac users deem themselves a little bit special. They think that they have the ability to go ahead and manage their own updates, to connect and update their own OSs and do those types of things. And this is all yes and good fun, but what it really means is that even Windows administrators will tell you that 64% of you come back to us and say, you know what, there are Macs on our network. We're not specifically just a 100% Windows shop. These devices need to be managed. And when you look at it from an enterprise aspect, over 10% of all endpoints out there in the Microsoft Enterprise ecosystem are Mac endpoints. They exist. They live out there. They're utilizing O365. They're utilizing your email. They're hanging off of your Wi-Fi networks. They're there, and they're unmanaged. Or if they're managed by a third-party system somewhere where you have little or no access to. So Windows IT admins and Macs. So when I asked on Twitter, our group of customers, our group of people that follow us within the SCCM ecosystem, do you let your end users choose having a PC or having a Mac? 25% of them actually said Macs over my dead body, because primarily they believe that they didn't want to have Macs on their network because they're so hard to manage, and because Mac users are so hard to manage. But the reality is, and even though this is a little bit humorous, the reality is that 84% of enterprises out there have Macs that are out there with knowledge workers attached to them, that are touching their ERP systems, that are touching their email systems, that are touching their CRM systems, that are connecting to Wi-Fi, that are connecting Bluetooth devices, doing all of that stuff that keeps you up at night when you're thinking about your PCs and your Windows networks, and your Windows endpoints. Those Macs are out there doing that. 87% of enterprises say they're going to be increasing Mac use on their networks. Their marketing, their creative development organizations, their development organizations, their software engineers. When you ask an end user who doesn't know any better, 64% of them say, if I have the choice, I'll choose a Mac over a Dell or over an IBM or over something else like that, over a Windows 10 machine. Now, that's just the bias that end users have. And 72% end users say they prefer a Mac over PC. Even people that utilize a PC on a regular basis say they still prefer the Mac OS, the Mac interface to Mac. So fighting this is kind of like you're pushing the rock up the hill. You're pushing the rock up the hill as far as trying to go ahead and manage your network to demand people utilize PCs, Windows. And the reality is that the end users and all of us, and I spent years in IT, I know a lot of IT organizations are now managed and compensated on end user experience. And telling somebody they can't have a Mac doesn't equate to a good end user experience for that end user. So you're left with a couple of options. Do you let Mac users manage their own updates? So we were able to record the exact moment that the first SCCM admin was told that their Mac users should manage their own updates. And this is exactly what they look like. Because this is something that you would never allow a Windows user to do, would be to update their own Office, to update their own Windows, update their own third-party applications. But yet for some reason, it's a choice that we are given in the Mac world when Macs are hanging off of Windows Enterprise networks. So what's the second choice? So the second choice is we send an email to the Mac user and we say, hey, bring in your Mac to the IT department. We need to do a bunch of updates. And so then they respond, yeah, I'll be there on the 35th of February. Because they're going to do that. They're unmanageable. They're not going to, if you've ever tried to wrangle a bunch of Mac users and have them come into the help desk area or the IT department to just do a simple patch or do a simple update, you know what I'm talking about. This is the environment in which we live, and this is why we developed Parallels Mac Management for SCCM to help with this. So this is the dilemma that you're left with, right? That you sit down every day and you're saying, okay, I have this first choice where I manage all my PCs within SCCM and I don't manage my Mac computers and I let those end users do it themselves. And then I have the choice number two, which I manage my PCs in SCCM. And then I manage my Macs in a separate standalone tool, separate infrastructure, maybe even a separate person. And that requires additional investment, training, and resources. Well, I think we can agree at the very beginning is the first option is not really an option, right? You cannot not manage your Macs. Leaving them out there to their own devices isn't an option, not with 70% of all breaches coming from an endpoint. You need to manage those updates. You need to know whether your High Sierra versions out there have the proper updates, whether your Mojave OSs have the proper updates. You need to know the percentage of you need to be able to manage those things. So this isn't really an option. So let's talk about the second option, right? So the second option is, well, you bring in a third-party app. Well, which one? Where do you start? How do you choose which third-party app you're going to go ahead and bring in? Now this is, if you have a 90% or an 80% Mac environment and only 20% of your devices are Windows, this is a pretty good option. But what if you're 80-20 the other way? What if you're 80% Windows and 20% Mac? What if you're 95% Windows and the 5% of Macs that you have are in executive row, or in marketing, or in creative, and they have to be managed? How do you go ahead and incur the cost of bringing in a third-party solution to go ahead and manage? So what you're left with is the need to buy yet another piece of software. And you know who likes that yet another piece of software is that Mac admin, because the Mac admin then can go ahead and get a better certification. They can get more knowledge. They can put another line in their LinkedIn profile. And that's the thing, because the Mac ecosystem exists to create administrators and specialists that have certifications in all of these different solutions. So what we've determined is yet another piece of software is an unacceptable solution for many of our end users. So what we say is we can keep calm, we can keep you calm, and we can manage your Macs in SCCM. What we provide within SCCM is a plugin. It's literally a plugin that fits directly within your current SCCM infrastructure and your current console. It takes about 6 hours to deploy. And you can manage your Macs right next to your PCs where you do all your work within SCCM. 42% of our customers never even managed a Mac before they brought on Parallels for Mac management. 23% of them switched from one of those, from the last slide, from one of those other solutions. They switched from one of those to go ahead to bring in Parallels Mac management. About 10%, 1 in 10, they used a custom solution that they had to build themselves, or some guy who they inherited the department from 10 years ago invented themselves. And then 24% tried to use SCCM alone to manage the Macs. And that wasn't working for them because there's only like 4 or 5 things that you can do within SCCM natively to go ahead and manage a Mac. So that's where those people came from. So we believe in Parallels by centralizing your PC and Mac management. You can do a bunch of things. You can leverage the current infrastructure you've already invested in, that you already work in, that you already know, and you can utilize that to fully manage your Mac computers. You can gain control of them just like you gain control of PCs. Endpoint discovery happens right alongside Windows discovery. You turn it on, and all of a sudden, look, there's 7 Macs over there in marketing I didn't know existed. Now we've got which OSs do they have? Which patches do they have? Now I can update them. Now I can manage them. You can easily extend your infrastructure and your processes and your skills. Your inventory, your software discovery, your distribution, it's, to use a phrase, parallel to what you're doing with your Mac, with your PCs directly within SCCM. And it provides your IT departments and you as IT administrators the best Mac OS management capabilities without having to have another console or another FTE to manage those. So what we do is we take Yapos and we draw a big line through it. You don't need another piece of software. What you need is SCCM. So let's talk a little now directly about the application itself, about how Parallels Mac Management enables full lifecycle management of Mac OS, and how it makes sense to use the SCCM infrastructure and the SCCM admins you already have to bring what we call the last mile of endpoint management, rather than setting up and duplicating infrastructure and support staff, right? So here's something, if you're interested in and you work in SCCM, is something very familiar to you. It's the System Center Configuration Manager console. Because remember, Parallels Mac Management is tightly integrated with SCCM. All of our tasks are done within the SCCM console. Most of the actions are done using standard SCCM dialogues. Some of them you extend to provide Mac-specific information, and we can talk about that. Specifically, it's like maybe you want to go ahead and lock out Bluetooth for those Mac devices. Well, there's a way to do that now within SCCM, and we can talk about that in either offline or in a technical conversation that you may want to have with our sales engineers. And we store all of this data within the SCCM site code database. So you're in SCCM and you're managing the Macs right alongside, in tandem, in parallel to the PCs that you're already managing. Now, you have several options when you want to enroll Macs into SCCM, right? Now, Macs can be found by scanning the network with our built-in scanning utility against your boundaries. Domain join Macs can be enrolled using Active Directory System Discovery. Those of you know that you're using that right now. You can also use Apple Device Enrollment Program, or DEP, for enrollment and the initial configuration. And of course, as always, you can enroll Macs by simply manually installing the Parallels Mac client. So again, there's multiple flavors for you to choose from how you want to go ahead to enroll. And maybe your enrollment policies are different for different divisions of your organization. Maybe marketing does it differently than sales engineering. Maybe your software engineers do it differently than legal. Well, this gives you the capability, the freedom, the choice to go ahead and develop the way you want to enroll these devices. Now, everybody loves inventory and reporting on inventory, right? Well, Parallels Mac, the client that's located on the Mac devices, sends the inventory information not to a third-party database, not to the cloud somewhere where someone can grab it. It sends the inventory to SCCM according to SCCM schedule, just like your PCs. So your system information, your list of installed applications, File Vault 2 encryption status, user logon information, all of that goes into the DB you're currently working on right now with your PCs alongside it. Now, compliance. The enforcement of compliance is incredibly important. Again, remember, 70% of those Macs or of those endpoints out there, or 70% of those breaches are coming from endpoints, and 90% of those breaches on endpoints are from patches that have not been applied. That compliance has not been enforced. So we offer several ways to enforce compliance on Macs using configuration items. Now, you can use detection and remediation scripts, which are standard in SCCM, right? You can also use configuration protocols embedded in configuration items like mobile econfig files. You can also enforce File 2 or File Vault 2 encryption with either personal or institutional keys. And the keys are escrowed and stored in, wait for it, the SCCM database. Nothing third party, nothing outside the realm of what you're currently doing right now. This is a plugin that extends the reach of SCCM for you. Now, deploying software. Who among us has never had to deploy a software package through SCCM? You can deploy software to Macs now using both packages and applications. So applications are displayed in Parallels Application Portal on Macs. Maintenance windows are supported. You can even deploy software for interactive or silent deployment. You remember those Mac users in the last slide that weren't going to bring in their Mac in order to get updated? Doesn't matter. And you know what? You don't have to get them upset and shut down their machine in order to go ahead and push the update. You can do it silently now. So they don't even know they're being managed. And again, this is the freedom that this is allowed to you within SCCM, where you currently are already working. Now, Mac OS image deployment, right? Parallels can image Macs. We can also, for those of you that have run into the issues with the T2 Macs, we can image those as well as all of the older Macs, the pre-T2. And we're going to talk a little bit about that in one of the last slides. We enable Mac OS imaging over the network with task sequences. So again, we're utilizing the same functionality that you would use for your PCs. And we utilize a custom GUI operating system deployment process, right? Now, Apple software updates are also supported by integration with SCCM using WSUS. So Apple has a lot of their own updates. There's a lot of everything else. You don't want, just like with Windows, you are running a special application. There's something specific going on with your ERP or with your CRM. You don't want to do any updates that are going to screw up any connections or anything else like that. So you go ahead and test them out. That's what you do in the Windows world. You test out the update. Is the update cool? Does it hurt anything? No, it doesn't. Okay, let's push the update out to our PCs. Why? Why can't you do the same thing with Macs? Well, you can. And this is how you do it. So the Apple software updates, again, are supported by integration with SCCM using WSUS. We can even automate patching with ADRs. Now, you can see compliant, required, not required, and unknown statuses. And again, it's the same right-click process. Create software update. You right-click and you create the update. When we actually demo this solution up to this point, when you're actually in the deep dive, a lot of our customers and a lot of the people that look at it actually say, well, this is great, but this is kind of boring because I know how to do all of this in SCCM anyway. You're not showing me anything new like a third-party software and a new console that I can do this. And that's kind of the point, because when you're managing endpoints, you kind of want it to be boring. You want it to be, okay, this is how I do this, I cross my T, I dot my I, I push out the update, and it's done. Because the exciting part of endpoint management is when you come in the morning and your boss tells you that there's been a breach because a patch that was supposed to go out last Tuesday didn't hit a couple of machines. That's a really exciting day, and we can all live without that level of excitement. So yes, when you're watching the demo and you're utilizing it, We're not teaching you anything you don't already know how to do in SCCM. But again, that's the point. In this case, boring is actually good. Remote access. So we also provide a level of remote access where you can access your Mac remotely utilizing SSH or VNC. So like most software packages, we go ahead and update on a regular basis. Parallels updates our Parallels Mac management software for SCCM twice a year. Now we're also very cognizant of Apple and what Apple is doing with OS updates. So whenever Apple rolls out a new Mac OS, we go ahead and update that as well. So you all know we recently had Mojave and a couple other things. So let's see what's been added to Parallels Mac management here in version 7. So day one, we were able, day one Mac OS 10.14 Mojave came out, we supported it. Absolutely day one support of new Mac OSs. We also, with that T2 issue, provide a USB bootable media capability to allow you to even manage those Macs which are T2 devices. We've invested a lot of time and energy in the next two solutions where we provide internet-based computer management in the newest version, as well as MDM support. Because we know, although we would love just to have PCs on our network, or even PCs and Macs, there's a whole bunch of other devices out there that we need to go ahead and manage as well. So why do we bother with bootable media in the first place? Well, NetBoot, it's perfectly good if you have a small network or if you have devices that are NetBoot capable. But the issue is that in the case of many subnets, you need to configure DHCP forwarding. It may even be harder if you have a complicated hardware setup. And quite honestly, you may not even be allowed to do the network configuration yourself, right? So the T2 chip, when it came out, first off, NetBoot gone. Secondly, how do you go ahead and push out images? How you do this types of thing? It's problematic. Now, we had a native solutions ever since I think it was one of the first or second versions of Parallels Mac Management. We had the capability of providing USB boot. This wasn't an add-on that we did in version 7 just to address the T2 imaging issue. This is something that we had natively for a number of years. So first thing you need to do when you're in the T2 device, you need to go ahead and enable USB boot for this Mac. And then you can boot from the recovery partition, and then you can disable the startup security. Just those two radio buttons right there. And then the bootable media is created using a command line tool, as you're all familiar with command line tools, resulting with a faster boot process. It's even simpler with a USB-C. So you're capable of those T2 devices that you have out there in network, that the new ones that are being shipped and you need to re-image in that, you have the capability within Parallels Mac Management and SCCM to use bootable media to image those bad boys. Everything else prior to that, you can utilize the legacy ways in which to go ahead and get those images out there. Now, internet-based client management. What is this? Well, primarily it's relatively simple. Internet-based client management, or IBCM. It's primarily just managing those devices that are on your network connected via the internet. So our version 7 introduces support for this, allowing you as administrators to manage your Mac devices, even when they're remotely connected. Now again, this allows for compliance with your on-premise as well as those not on the corporate network, such as the ubiquitous traveling employee's computer, the traveling Mac that's flying around the country. You can manage that. You can manage those updates when they plug into the Westin Wi-Fi or they plug into the Starbucks Wi-Fi. They connect to the network. You can manage that now, and you can manage it through SCCM. A little more on this on IBCM. We suggest that for best practices that the IBCM proxy, Internet-Enabled Management Point and Distribution Point, be placed in a DMZ. Our Parallels Mac Management for SCCM Admin Guide has a configuration section for this. And if you move through this process with us and trial this, you'll have access to all those configuration guides and administrative guides, and you can actually test it out for yourself. Okay, MDM support. Why are we providing MDM support in this latest version? Well, as much as we would like our networks to just look like this, we understand that our networks look like this. So what we've provided, we've added support for user-approved MDM enrollment. We've added support for signed MDM enrollment profiles, and we've added an ability to deploy configuration profiles via MDM. These are the addition. So these have just been created and added, and functions that have added just here in version 7 within the last couple of months. So what these provide is hopefully a capability that far exceeds what you're doing right now in managing your Macs. So if you're managing your Macs in SCCM right now, if you look on the right-hand side, those 4 check boxes, that's what you're doing. You've got hardware software inventory, you've got an app deployment model, you can push some scripts, and you can support multi-site. Everything else, no mas. You're not doing it. With Parallels Mac Management for SCCM, you put in our plugin, and all of your other boxes are checked. You're able to do manual enrollment, non-OSD task sequences, remote wipe and lock, enforcing File Vault 2 encryption. All of those things you're able to do from within your SCCM console. So what we hope to provide you is the ability to maximize your investment in SCCM and leverage all the existing practices and processes that you've already created managing your PCs within SCCM. Plug and play integration with SCCM. We work with your existing infrastructure. We support current branch and legacy SCCM versions. We also support current branches. If you come over to our location at 11 o'clock. Control and manage Macs on the network just like PCs. We advance Mac management capabilities. It's a relatively short learning curve because if you know SCCM, you're already trained on PMM. And we reduce total cost of ownership. You don't need another console, not yet another piece of software, no Yapos. You don't need to be an Mac admin to administrate a Mac. You don't need to hire a Mac admin to administer a Mac. And those of you that are looking at Intune or are looking at maybe in 24 months or some odd moving to Intune, we have that capability in the hopper as well. So right now, this is what we manage outside of what Intune has provided. Later on in the year, we're going to be providing a solution, specifically Parallels Mac Management for Intune, that duplicates the functionality that you see here within SCCM for Intune for our end users. We'll also have, and you need not wait for the Intune. If you need to manage your Macs now with an SCCM, we can do it for you now, and in 24 months, or 12 months, or 18 months, or 6 months, when you have to move to Intune, and you're moving to Intune, we have a migration path for you, and we'll be able to go ahead and do that for you. So you can contact us after this presentation. So here's my contact information. You can email me directly. Here's my phone number. You can call me directly. I'll answer the phone or at least go to voicemail, and I'll talk to you about Parallels Mac Management. All of you who attended, you will be getting a follow-up email. That email will include a link to this presentation recorded. It'll also have a link to some other documentation here for Parallels, as well as a link to our deep dive demo, which the next one is scheduled for tomorrow. And it'll also have links to copies of the technical documentation and the statistical documentation that we utilized to put together this presentation. I know I'm 6 minutes over. So thank you so much for your time. If there's any questions right now and you'd like to go ahead and ask a question via chat, we have people that are available to go ahead and answer some of those questions right now. And again, we can also go ahead and contact you directly to go ahead and answer any questions you may have or show you a custom demonstration if your AD is rather complex and you think that there needs to be something special that you need to see that we can do. We do that all the time with enterprise clients. So please feel free to go ahead and ask for that. So with that, I'll pause and I'll just open it up for chat questions. And if there's none, I will end the webinar in about 90 seconds. About 60 more seconds. 30 more seconds and I'll be ending the webinar. Danny, we do have one question. Is Apple VPP supported? Okay. Thank you for the person that asked that question. We'll make sure to go ahead and get you an answer to that offline. We'll be sending it to you via email, and we'll connect to you that way. Thank you so much, everybody, for attending this webinar. We really do appreciate your time. Please have a wonderful rest of your day, and we're here to help you with your Mac concerns. Thank you.